Respected chairpersons, dear friends and colleagues, thank you for bearing with me that even at 4:45 there are some of you still there in the hall to listen to my talk. I am indeed thankful to Dr. Shilpi and her team for having invited me here for the scientific deliberations. And over the past 3 to 4 decades, the ART specialists have undertaken a lot of challenges, from the agonist to the antagonist protocol to the poor responders, implantation failures. But now the ART specialist of today has to offer fertility preservation to cancer patients. So let us see in the next 15 minutes of my talk why, when and how we need to do fertility preservation. Now, fertility preservation has moved from providing services related to preserving gametes, that is sperms and oocytes and embryos, to actual oncofertility care. And this is a broad term today encompassing sexual dysfunction, hormonal dysfunction, complex contraception, fertility related psychosocial support. Now, as per the National Cancer Registry of India, by 2020, 11.4 lakh people will have some form of cancer, out of which 30 to 75% of males and 40 to 80% of females have problems with fertility at some point after completion of cancer treatment. So why is it important to discuss uptake of oncofertility care? As the number of long-term cancer survivors are increasing, fertility has become an increasingly important quality of life issue. 4 to 5% of newly diagnosed cancer patients are younger than 35 years old, and we all know that aggressive cancer treatment, especially with alkylating agents or ionizing radiation, can cause premature ovarian failure. The loss of reproductive potential is one of the most distressing adverse consequences of successful cancer treatment and can affect the quality of life of cancer survivors. Therefore, wherever possible, oncofertility care should be an integral part of cancer care, from diagnosis through survivorship. Now, why it is important to discuss? Because there are various guidelines till date enforcing oncofertility care amongst the patients. These are multidisciplinary working group, the French group, the National Comprehensive Cancer Network, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. Despite all the extensive recommendations, fertility preservation care is often under-implemented. So why it is under-implemented? Because there are certain barriers to uptake of oncofertility services. There are several barriers which have been found to thwart the implementation of comprehensive and equitable fertility preservation practice. There is lack of referral pathways, there is lack of a model of care for oncofertility services, there is inequitable access based on the cost, there is issue of health literacy, there is lack of trained staff who can deliver these services, and there is no consensus about the best way to deliver this information. So a population-based study published in 2015 showed that the proportion of patients who were discussed about fertility preservation option before cancer treatment was began was 71% in young males and 44% in young women. Actual fertility preservation was made only in 31% males and 6.8% females. This low referral rates and underutilization of fertility preservation are problematic even by now, and the main barriers are lack of knowledge, attitude and behavior of the healthcare provider. There is a time constraint before cancer treatment begins, and in India the financial barrier. And when you see the global literature on cancer and fertility, you see the gross underutilization of oncofertility care services. These are the number of cancer patients, and this is the utilization of oncofertility care. Indian scenario is not any different. You have hardly 3% utilization of these services in India. So currently there are several options available for fertility preservation in young cancer patients. However, the only established option for male is sperm cryopreservation. For women, both embryo cryopreservation and oocyte cryopreservation are considered as well established methods. Ovarian tissue cryopreservation at the moment is offered in research setting, but it does predict a promising additional method for fertility preservation for future, and this is the only option for pre-pubertal girls who want to preserve fertility before cancer treatment. So oncofertility today is an interdisciplinary medical field which is at the intersection of oncology and reproductive medicine, which expands fertility options for cancer survivors. We all know that cancer treatments including chemotherapy, radiotherapy and surgery is going to do a lot of gonadotoxic effect. In women, it is going to produce genetically damaged oocytes, it is going to lead to ovarian failure, early menopause and other reproductive problems, whereas for men it is going to damage the testes, it is going to interfere with sperm production and the testosterone secretion. The extent of follicular loss is again going to depend on age of the patient and the type of the cytotoxic treatment. This is just to tell you that most of the chemotherapeutic agents can be classified according to the phase of the cell cycle. So radiotherapy is also now well recognized to cause destruction of the ovarian pool. In 89, the dose of radiation required to destroy the 50% of the primordial follicles was around 4 gray, but in 2003, after applying the Fadi-Gostin mathematical model of the ovarian follicle decay, the LD50 was calculated to be as less as 2 gray. So there is an additional effect of radiotherapy on uterus and endometrium as well. In males, the degree of impairment after radiotherapy depends on the radiation dose. Radiation doses as low as 0.1 to 1.2 gray can impair spermatogenesis, with doses of more than 4 gray causing permanent damage. Apart from radio and chemotherapy, the disease itself could affect fertility by causing gonadal dysfunction. In males, Hodgkin's disease and soft tissue sarcoma and metastatic Ewing sarcoma have impaired semen quality even before the patients were assessed for evaluation of fertility. So we need to do certain risk assessment before preserving fertility, the diagnosis, the type of cancer, age of patient, the treatment plan and the expected effect on the fertility. The potential markers of gonadal damage are well established in patients who have attained puberty. In prepubertals, we do not have any markers. Now coming to the established methods, ovarian stimulation for embryo or mature oocyte cryopreservation remains the most likely strategy to result in subsequent pregnancy. Patient condition should not preclude safely carrying out controlled ovarian stimulation and oocyte retrievals. There were previously concerns regarding having adequate time to undergo stimulation and oocyte retrieval, but now we have the random start stimulation protocols which are as successful. Embryo cryopreservation is an established technology that provides good success rate, but this is limited to patients who are married. The data on live births from frozen embryos in cancer patients are limited. Cardozo et al. Have compared pregnancy in cancer patients, the frozen embryo transfer with age and time match controls with tubal factor infertility, and they have found a cumulative pregnancy rate per transfer for cancer patient in controls 37 versus 43%, and cumulative live birth rate per transfer is 30 versus 32%. There are certain limitations to embryo cryopreservation. You cannot offer it to prepubertal patients. You cannot do this in estrogen sensitive cancer, and there are ethical and religious issues could arise surrounding the disposition of frozen embryos should the patient die or separate. Now coming to mature oocyte cryopreservation, it involves stimulating the ovaries with gonadotrophins and surgically retrieving the oocytes. Oocyte preservation is a better option for all women who want to maintain a reproductive autonomy. This can be offered to unmarried patients as well. Cryopreservation and thawing techniques have improved, so mature oocyte cryopreservation is giving us steadily improving pregnancy rates. And multiple randomized controlled trials between the warmed and the vitrified oocytes have proved beyond doubt a very good pregnancy rate in the studies of Cobo and Laura Renzi et al. Also, I would like to emphasize that patients with history of cancer do not have an increased rate of congenital malformation, genetic abnormalities or malignant neoplasms in the offspring. The other method for doing fertility preservation is ovarian shielding. The effect of radiation on ovarian function, as we know, is dose dependent, and the ovaries may be damaged even from the scattered radiation. So shielding to reduce the radiation to the ovaries when possible is the standard medical procedure which is currently offered to the patients. Ovarian transposition, it involves moving the ovaries out of the radiation field either at the time of initial oncologic surgery as a separate procedure, and they are anchored high as possible above the pelvic brim, either in the anterior abdominal wall or in the palacolic gutter. The risk of transposition are ovarian cyst formation, postoperative adhesions, chronic pelvic pain, migration of these ovaries back to their native position, and premature ovarian insufficiency. However, there is 1% risk of metastatic disease existing in the ovaries. Now, ovarian transposition may preclude future transvaginal oocyte retrieval if in vitro fertilization is required. So, we need to do trans-abdominal retrieval in these patients. This is just sharing one of the interesting case by one of my colleagues in the Fertility Preservation Consortium. They did the ovarian transposition here and they could successfully retrieve the oocytes from the ovary which was transported under the anterior abdominal wall. They could retrieve the oocytes, make the embryo, and they could transfer it in a surrogate. Now, the experimental methods for female fertility preservation are ovarian tissue cryopreservation. Cryopreservation of the ovarian cortical tissue is an efficient and high yield method of potentially preserving thousands of ovarian follicles through a single procedure. This is a unique opportunity to preserve fertility for prepubertal girls. A sample of ovarian cortical tissue is obtained by laparoscopy or laparotomy, dissected into small fragments, and subsequently cryopreserved using a slow cool technique of vitrification. Ovarian function post-transplantation, it functions only for a limited period of time here. There are certain concerns about ovarian cortical tissue cryopreservation of ovarian failure, disruption of endocrine function before reaching adulthood, reintroducing cancerous cells, especially from systemic cancers such as leukemia, and in carefully selected patients or those who cannot delay beginning cancer treatment, this has to be offered. Now, these are certain risk factors when we are doing ovarian cortex tissue cryopreservation and transplantation at a later age. Different diseases, different cancers have a different percentage of this disease recurring after the ovarian cortex is reimplanted. Now, what are the experimental methods? We know that in vitro maturation of immature oocytes can be done in these patients. They are retrieved doing an ultrasound guided oocyte retrieval. The oocytes are matured, they are cryopreserved. Young cancer patients who are unsuitable candidates for ovarian stimulation or who are unprepared to decide on the creation of embryo may be the candidates for this experimental treatment. The first healthy baby using IVM was reported in 2014, where a patient presented with stage 3C ovarian cancer underwent surgery, at which time immature oocytes were retrieved and retrieved ex vivo after an oophorectomy. Now, the established methods in male are cryopreservation of a freshly ejaculated semen specimen. For patients with azoospermia, a surgical approach for sperm extraction. Gonadal shielding is recommended for men undergoing radiation therapy. There is a significant reduction in radiation dose which may be achieved with this. The experimental methods for male fertility preservation of harvesting the stem cells in the testes. The testicular tissue containing spermatogonial cells is cryopreserved for transplantation back into the testes. Human testicular tissue cryopreservation has a higher post-thaw viability because of the supporting Sertoli cells, and creation of spermatozoa from stem cells offers another threshold theoretical option for male fertility preservation. Posthumous sperm retrieval has an ethical dilemma where you need a written documentation by all the people who are involved in these healthcare scenarios. Sperm, they say, can be harvested within 36 to 48 hours of death. Methods which are used are en bloc orchidectomy with epididectomy, with or without basal sperm aspiration. So now the future directions are creating of an artificial ovary. There has been great interest and awakening for creating an artificial ovary with the objective of reducing the possibility of disseminating malignant cells. This maximizes the survival and growth of isolated follicles and ovarian cells, recreating the optimal microenvironment. Then the future directions are use of stem cells in male fertility preservation, creating spermatozoa from these sperm cells. And this is a working model for ex vivo reconstitution of autologous human ovarian tissue. So we need to do perfect counseling for these couples who come to us for fertility preservation. Inadequate amount of fertility preservation information available to newly diagnosed cancer patient is the problem of today. Choice of fertility preservation strategy in the face of an uncertain relationship future, decision making regarding use of third party reproduction, the sperm, egg donation and gestational surrogacy. There are certain treatment expectations regarding pregnancy and miscarriage of the couple. There are certain ethical issues related to treatment including creation, cryopreservation and disposition of embryos and oocytes, and of course there is a decision regret from patients who have declined fertility preservation. So to conclude, despite recent advances in the available techniques, fertility preservation services remain underutilized. While a cancer diagnosis 40 years ago was seen as a death sentence, increasing rates and long-term survivorship have brought attention to addressing quality of life issues like the ability to create a family after cancer treatment and maintaining proper endocrine function. Additionally, fertility preservation may play a role in maintaining reproductive autonomy for women that chose to delay childbearing for professional or personal reasons. In the words of Emily Dickinson, I would like to say that hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, and it sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And to all cancer survivors, I would say that you are an inspiration to those who know you, a wonderful experience, an example of courage and perseverance, and may the fullness of life be yours in the day ahead, and we as fertility specialists should be able to offer them a complete family at the end of the cancer treatment. And I thank you for a patient hearing.